Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on your lovely screen. And we are happy to welcome you to the CRMKonvo show number 290. And we are very happy to have Vivek Bhaskaran with us. I hope I pronounced it properly. The thing is, empowering better decisions through customer-driven insights will be our topic today. And Vivek, the founder and CEO of QuestionPro, where I have only the pleasure to know his German-Polish chap, who is running that part of the business area. But Thomas met him live and in color on one of the events on QuestionPro, which is a company that's been building web-based research and experience technologies for years, focused on tuning feedback into decisions that actually stick. You have done several researches, and we found it extremely helpful to go through these researches in the past and work out what is working best for the audience. So the interesting part is you are not a dashboard evangelist with your organization and your team members, but you drive the spirit of catching the experience. And I would like to hand over to you and finish the introduction, Vivek, as I might have missed some parts, such as your startup has been a prestigious magazine awarded in his building up phase. And yeah, it's good that we have you on the show, and we are extremely grateful that you made it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I think you mentioned the word startup. I'm not sure we are a startup. We started the
No,
business.
not any longer.
Not
2008, that was the
to-
startup part.
yeah,
Apologies.
exactly. No. It's not apologies. It's like we've been done it. I started quick background. I started the business. I started the company back in 2005, and then I ran for about 5 years. Then I took a break. Did a couple other startups. Most startups failed. Then I came back to run QuestionPro in 2015, and I've been running it since then. So that's kind of, at least in a nutshell, that's my journey. And originally I'm from India. I live in the States right now. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I lived in Russia for 2 years, not Poland, but I lived in Russia for 2 years. And then I came to the States, went to school here, started the company, did some work, and then started the company in 2005, and I've been doing that since then. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's my background, personal background.
Started to work for a company in Provo, yeah.
That's right.
Which we will not name.
Well, we can name it. It doesn't matter really. That's why I'm in the survey business to begin with, right? So, so that's the backstory.
Yeah, similar for me. I came into the CRM business by accident.
I'm grateful for that accident, Thomas. I'm grateful.
Yeah. Well, it could have been worse, far worse, I think. But hey, so looking at what you are doing, so it's and as Ralph already said, you are not about dashboards, but about action. And I think your introduction already gave that hint too. So, I mean, QuestionPro is about questions and getting them answered, and answers to questions don't change. What changes or what creates change is, well, when one acts on these questions. So now let's put that to CX. So CX and CX projects, they are, well, collecting answers. And how do you contribute to turning them into decisions and then actions?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ken, who's my partner in the CX business, I think he says it best. I think our vision is from journeys to actions. That's the way we think about things. Understanding journeys and creating change and creating actions. So there's a lot of things that goes on between those two endpoints, really, right? So, and I think understanding journeys holistically is pretty important, as opposed to understanding individual touch points versus journeys. So we strongly believe that people believe in holistic journeys rather than individual kind of elements. And relationship with me. It's not just a couple of times we met. And we've exchanged messages, and everything contributes to this relationship. Realistically, it's not just the times we met. So I think that's kind of at least the first part of that. The second part is understanding behavior, getting feedback, and the third part is obviously taking action. And so we have, I think at least our position and tool, we have tools for all three components realistically. So understanding journeys is one component of it, voice of the customer, the second component of it, taking action, so the third component of it. So we have tools for all three elements. And the taking action part, not only on the customer side, but the same logic, quite frankly, applies on the market research side. Same logic applies on the employee experience side also. So everybody collects data, but few and far between take actions associated with the data that's collected or decisions that have been made. So understanding that and solving for that is equally important as much as collecting the data or understanding, if not more, quite frankly, but at least. So what I tell people at least is like, before they start doing a project or understanding something, is like, hey, if I actually told you the results, what would you do today? Okay, we want to know something, right? So if I just, at least internally, at least I can't say this to my customers, but at least I can say this internally, like people are like, hey, we need more data. And I'd say, you know what? Assume the data says 72%. Yes. Just make it up, right? Have a plan then. Do you have a plan? If I said 72%, yes. What are you going to do after that? And everybody will be like, well, think about a plan. Okay, I just told you 72%. That's it. That's the number. And so now what? So now people start thinking, okay, if it's 72%, then we have to do something. We'll do this. All right, show me the plan. What the hell are you going to do if this says 72%? Instead of waiting for it to get to 72% or whatever it is, whatever the answer is. So I think internally, at least, there's a bias for action, at least in QuestionPro, which is what I believe is going to actually makes change and makes the company better, faster, and moves things along. And we have tools, obviously track those actions. It's not that, frankly, you don't need to use our tools. So any kind of action planning kind of project management tool will probably do to kind of at least, it's more of a internal kind of, what I call bias for action. So bias for data, you should have bias for action. So that's at least my personal viewpoint. And within QuestionPro, the way we orchestrated a lot of this is like, during our management calls, we present a lot of data internally, but we're trying to make decisions during the call, straight up, right? And that's why the management call is there, is to make decisions, not look, the data is just to kind of like guide you a little bit in terms of, okay, where to kind of focus on. But after that, it's more about like, did we make a decision in this call? That's it. If we didn't make a decision, then we've not actually done anything. We're just kind of bullshitted each other for an hour. That's it. It's kind of like, so I track that quite a bit internally within QuestionPro. At least I track that. Like, hey, did we make a decision today? And what is the decision that we made? That's it. And I think that has worked. At least that's worked for us. Let's put it that way. At least worked for me. So I feel good about it. So as long as the decision is made, something happens against that, and then progress happens and there's movement. And movement is the thing that we're all looking for.
Movement brings me to a metaphor that you're once in a while using: motorcycles and client success. I mean, movement is one thing and speed is another thing. But, couldn't one say that too many people, not only companies, but people, are running very fast into the wrong direction? I mean,
I actually think it's okay if you're in the right or wrong direction. At least I'll give you my personal viewpoint. Right or wrong direction is very difficult and very subjective in any business. Frankly, it's my viewpoint is that I'd rather go somewhere wrong fast rather than spend 3 months trying to figure out where to go. So at least that's my personal viewpoint. So, and that's not. Maybe true for every single business on the planet. If you're a utility company, probably that's not a great idea because, people need power 100% of the time, and it's not 96% of the time, really. And it depends upon the kind of business you're running, really, right? If you want, 100% stability all the time, obviously you got to go slower and different. You want to innovate fast, and you can, even within the business, you can see you have different product lines. We have product lines that are mature. We've been running this business for 20 plus years, so we have products that have been built for a long time, and then we are innovating and building new products. So we have all, just like every other company, you will have. It's not just one kind of mechanism. Some products are very stable. We have 7,000 customers on the platform, and some products we have 7 customers on that. So the product that has 7 customers versus the product that has 7,000 customers fundamentally has to be treated differently, and the way we operate it is slightly different. So in that context, we can move fast and break, in products that are new and innovative, and we just launched it, and we're trying to. We don't even know if it's going to work or not. We are testing the market and seeing things. Then there are products that are like fairly stable and operating with thousands of customers, so that we operate on a different scale, and we are in the software business. So the simple thing for us is, when do we release products? When do we release? So those things run on for example, on a monthly life cycle. So every month we upgrade, and some we upgrade on a daily, weekly basis, right? And that depends upon A, the complexity of the product, B, the total surface area that product really encompasses. So that's how I think about speed. Is speed is, at least speed is what we index on speed quite a bit. And you're right. I have the analogy for motorcycles, but I actually love motorcycles anyway. On a personal level, I love riding motorcycles. It's a lot of fun. It gives me some freedom. It gives me a different kind of. It's, apart from a metaphor, it's actually a lot of fun too. So it gives me So yeah, I mean, I think that's the way I think about speed. Is like, you might as well, even if you're in the wrong direction, and I know, like, most decisions are made with insufficient data. Simply put, to say you will get every piece of data for every single thing is just simply practically not feasible. So you have some data, then some gut, some intuition, and you got to make a call. And that's the nature of most decisions, frankly. At least that's my viewpoint.
So do you see that, or would you think that if you are gathering more data, that you are probably running into the risk of confusing correlation and causality?
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think, most people, I mean, I think that you need some data to kind of ground yourself, to understand directionally if you're going in the right direction, wrong direction, different direction. There's some amount of data. Completely going blind, we don't do that, at least on QuestionPro, and we don't obviously recommend doing it. But we also don't recommend saying that you have to, find every single answer to every single question. That's also, I don't think it's practically feasible. Every business has to make decisions. They're running, they got to run as fast as they can, and you have to make. There are time limits associated with decisions. So going back to just say, like, all right, we have some data, and then maybe causation, maybe correlation. I don't worry about it personally too much. I was like, okay, we got some data, we understand, and we got to take a bet for decisions. If you start looking at all decisions as bets, not like 100% guaranteed success, then it gives you some cover, right? It gives you, say, okay, you know what, we're gonna make this decision. We have, this is the data we got. Can we make a decision? It's very intuitive and subjective. Realistically, like, okay, want to do this? Do you not want to do this? It's not, at least for any different companies will operate differently. Some people want, everything dotted to the I and crossed to the T, and then we make a decision. Some people like, okay, so that will vary depending upon frankly, I think the personality of the leaders, the personality of the management team, to say that, all right, cool, we got enough data, can we make a call? Right.
Well, to quite an extent, I'd say that's an entrepreneurial lens on it. So you have
correct.
You need to take some decisions based upon incomplete data, and that's entrepreneurship in a nutshell, actually. So, translating that a little back to CX, where do you see your clients or other people's clients fail most often? Is it based on bad data that they have? Is it based on poor interpretation of this data, or simply an execution problem, or a combination thereof?
I think most of the fails I've seen is really like people at different levels just get addicted to producing the data. That's it, right? Getting to the data. And they've not thought about what happens after you get the data. That's where I've seen, oh, we need this dashboard, we need this, we need this. Great, you got this dashboard. Now what? Now what? Oh, we don't have a plan yet. Well, there's no point getting a dashboard without a fucking plan. what are we doing? Like, okay, we know. Now we know. Okay, now we know. So I think that's where I see most of the fails. And then the fails come in the context of not immediately, like at the end of the year or at the end of 2 years. Oh, we've been doing this project for like 2 years. Somebody will come and say, like, what's the outcome? What have we done about it? And that's when projects get scrapped and like, oh yeah, we're going to scrap the entire program. Why? Because frankly, you've not shown the ROI against this program, really, right? So, so it is on CX at least. It's kind of the job of the program managers and the people who are running the program to kind of say like, okay, we got this data now. These things it's only 50% of the problem, right? Let's put it that way. Like getting the data is 50% of the problem. 50% of the problem is executing and managing and actually taking action on the data. If you kind of put that benchmark up front, saying, all right, most people put no, 100% of the problem, getting to the finish line is getting the data. Okay. If that is not the finish line, that is like midpoint in a marathon is, only 13 miles. You still have 13 more miles to go. So, so if you kind of put that in your frame of reference, then at least you'll get some output out of it. Whether the output is good, bad, ugly, but at least you got some output out of it. And that's how I think about it.
How do you guide your clients, customers into this bias for action? To
upfront, I mean, we kind of like when we take on CX programs, we kind of like ask them to say, the same thing that we do internally, like, okay, what are the action plans really? And we have some tools like, okay, here's the data, create an action plan for the data, and that forces people to think about it, right? So like, what's your action plan against this data set, right? So we have as part of our kind of tooling. That includes journey management, voice of the customer, and action planning, 3 components, right? So you have to, in order to use the action planning, well, you have to plan, you have to do something, like literally you have to come up with, like, here's what we're going to do, right? The voice of the customer gives you access to what is happening, okay? Journey management is your planning model, really, up front, really. Okay, here's what we think we should do. Here's what's actually happening, and what we actually should do. So 3 components to any CX program. And if that 3rd component is not there, then we know that, well, there's little, there's no bias for action. There's no not really action, and very likely the program is going to get scrapped, right? And maybe not immediately, maybe in 3 years, maybe in 5 years, when somebody wakes up and says, oh, what are we spending all this money on? What are we doing this for? Then somebody will be like, okay, I don't even know how that affects our business. How do it affects anything in our top line, bottom line? We're just doing it because we're doing it. But I think most people in the research, CX and EX, who all understand this very clearly. And it is the job of the people who are running these programs to push for that action, to push for that change, to say like, hey, here's the data, here's the change we got to make. Here's the change we got to make, and push for that. And yes, a lot of times they'll hit roadblocks, but that's the point. You have to kind of power through the roadblocks. People will say like, no, I don't want to change. And generally humans don't want to change. That's kind of how we are built. We want to do the same thing we did yesterday. It's kind of like how we are. And it is, in my mind, is a job of the researchers as well as the CX professionals as well as the EX professionals to institute that change. Is literally their job. And so the people who think that change is their kind of at least 50% of their job function do really well. People who think collecting data is 100% of their job function usually end up in a tight spot. Maybe not immediately, but later on.
Now, that sort of sounds like the ones who are running / driving those projects, initiatives, need to be a bit more like scientists, actually. So they need to set up hypotheses, segment them, probably need to challenge their own thinking, think counterfactual, for example, but that doesn't need to give them the drive. So what does give them the ability to drive that change, if not the data?
I mean, the data informs them, and then I think the way I think about it, at least, is the data informs you, but it's, if you just pass the data on to other people and say, hey, I got you the data, you do what you want with it, right? It's very unlikely things are going to happen. Very unlikely.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it depends upon the personalities involved, but I would venture to guess that. And what is the how are you affecting the change? How are you orchestrating the change? It's kind of is it the scientist's job or is the researcher's job to affect the change? I think yes. Right. My personal opinion is yes. It's kind of your job to kind of get that done, because just collecting information and presenting information, is it's good, but it's 50%. In my opinion, it's 50% of the job. Right. So let's the other 50% is how do you affect change within the organization? How do you push for it? If you need to pick fights, you got to pick fights. You got to do it. That's it. It is what it is. Which means and you get rewarded for it also. I mean, I think almost anybody who runs a business ultimately is kind of like looking at the top line and the bottom line realistically, right? It's like, all right, cool. Do we make more money? Do we save money? And that's it. That's kind of the bottom. That is literally the game. So that's how at least all capitalistic kind of conversations are structured, whether we like it or not. And it is what it is. That is the capitalistic model that we all, at least the Western world, and we all live in. Is like, okay, look, we have to either make more money or make the same widget faster, better, cheaper. Simple. That's it. Like, save money or make money. That's it. It's come down to the simple. Those are the financial outcomes that most every company, every privately held company is aligned to. It's simple, right? So. Public institutions that are slightly different. They're not running on a P&L. They're slightly different. But at least private institutions are it's pretty straightforward. So how is the decision going to affect the top line or the bottom line is pretty simple. For me, it's, can you articulate that clearly and effectively to everybody and drive that behavior change. And I think people who do those changes are usually rewarded. You might have to pick fights, but realistically, there are, most folks in every company will also know this problem inside out. They also know that they are responsible for financial outcomes. In order to get financial outcomes, we have to kind of look at items that give us those financial outcomes, and are we pursuing those initiatives and projects. And yes, some of those projects will fail, some of them will succeed, but that's the nature of every single bet. Okay, not everything is going to work. We think that this is the best thing to do at this point of time, based on given the set of information that we have, given the time constraints and everything. We think this is the thing to do. Simple. That's the way I think about it.
Given that. Well, after all, what QuestionPro is about is surveys. Yes, at the root.
Let's go.
Yeah?
Yep.
At the root. So, is the design of the questions that get asked important for getting into this right data? So I'm thinking of we all have these types of questions that we get confronted with on a scale of 1 to 10. Yes, and that 5 to 10, maybe 100 times. Yeah, which is giving some information, but from a respondent point of view, I'd say there's not much skin in the game, because agree. It doesn't ask me to take a decision, to make trade-offs. Which
not all the time. I mean, there are trade-off based questions. Like when people do research, I mean, you're thinking in terms of CX, but when people do research, there's MaxDiff, Conjoint, there's a whole bunch of models that are used for doing actual real trade-off analysis.
That's what I wanted to get to.
Yeah. So typically, MaxDiff and kind of Conjoint are not used in CX-oriented cases. They're used in core research-oriented cases, right? So like, okay, look, if I want to buy this AirPod, like, what are the things that actually I care about? Is it sound quality versus price versus brand versus, noise cancellation versus battery life? There are like, 5 different kind of components that are associated with it, and truly understanding kind of each of the values of each of them. Conjoint is a model that, like, okay, look, between this and this, which one would you buy? Between this and this, which one would you buy? You go through a series of exercises for doing that, and then you get pretty good data. You get a good sense of like what the utility value of sound quality versus noise cancellation. Let's put it that way, right? So, and that all those things matter. So that's kind of So when you design products or even design the marketing of a product, even the product is going to be, it is what's going to be. How you position the product also matters, really, right? iPhone, for example, their positioning is like, hey, best cameras on the planet. They are positioning themselves as kind of a storage of memory. That's it. That's the positioning, right? They don't get to say it's 5 megapixel or 3 megapixel or 18 megapixel. Nobody knows understand what it is. They're like, okay, it's gonna take the best photo for your children. That's it. Simple message, And cameras, it's not storage. It's their primary vector for the iPhone messaging is cameras. That's it. And because it relates to your heart, it relates to your kids, all that stuff. So these kind of things can be kind of measured, understood using any kind of qualitative, quantitative research to understand like, hey, how do you really feel about a phone? Is it really the 256 gigabytes of RAM, or is it a great camera? Which one do we anchor on? And more importantly, which one do we market? Right? I mean, you could same phone you could market in two different ways. You can say like, hey, look, I have a phone that has 1 terabyte of storage, or you could say this phone will take the best photos that you've ever taken in your life.
So now from a CX perspective, there are, with this type of questions, you are asking for trade-offs that I would take, or that customers expect, basically. In some, it's the expectation of the customers. Now, in order to be able to go into a decision, confidently decide something, you need to be on that scale that you have in mind, hypothesis. You need to be away from this hypothesis to some extent. So is there any guidance that you can give in how far one should be away from the own corporate optimal
I think so, right?
In order to inflict or engage in a change?
Absolutely. So the way I think about it, at least, is like you need one piece of data in the CX perspective. Like, is it right or wrong? Let's broadly speak. And we can argue about NPS versus CSAT versus whatever it is. That's kind of an irrelevant argument. It's just like, hey, right direction, wrong direction. Do you like it or do you not? And you can argue whether how much you like it. And okay, that's fine. That's a separate argument. The second point that we do is we ask a simple open-ended question. It's like, why? Why do you like? What you say you like me? Okay, fine. Or you don't. It's still fine, both ways. Now explain why. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you can get these two pieces of data, you can make pretty much almost every decision you want relatively quickly. Now, how you process that why question post facto is actually not that complicated today with kind of that like all kinds of tools available. We provide a whole bunch of tools. Everybody else provides one bunch of tools, but the core construct is pretty straightforward. One, are you happy or not? That's kind of like you solve that for that. Two, you answer the why question, right? So, and the why question can be targeted, saying that, hey, this is the scope of the why. Like, these are the 5 things. You cannot say anything more than that. Just kind of like a bad design, I would argue, frankly, right? Like, you have to open up that's what you're trying to get to, is you have to open up that aperture. You don't know why.
Yeah.
Okay. You may think these are the 5 reasons, but there could be the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th reasons, and it changes over time, to be honest, right? Today, why will be this, and then tomorrow it'll be something else, and the day after tomorrow it's going to be something else, right? Because the expectations and the operational expectations are changing every day, simply put. So your why should be, in my mind, at least open-ended. Is like, okay, tell me why do you like me? All right. And then today you like me because I'm wearing this cool shirt. Okay, fine. Tomorrow you may like me for something else, right?
Love the blue.
Yeah. So, and that changes over time. That obviously changes. That obviously changes over time, right?
Yeah.
And how you analyze that why helps you you have enough context at that point, right? So you have enough context, and you can make a decision based on that. Like, okay, like we see, like people are really loving the fact that, and it goes both ways. Honestly, a lot of people just look at the negative reasons for why. And they ignore the positive reasons of why. Okay, we actually advocate both. You have to even people love you, you have to know why they love you, because it's a reinforcing feedback loop, right? See, and more often, and this is a great example. Like, more often than not, when I talk to sales guys, when they close the deal, they'll be like, I closed the deal, yes, and I'll ask them, why did the customer go with you? And I'll get maybe most of the time a sales guy would be like, dude, it's me. I'm the
Yeah.
rock star. I am so good.
Yep.
So, but then you call up the customer and say, hey, tell me why on a separate channel. Why did you go with us? And you get a different list. And 100% of the time, the list don't match. It won't match because we're all biased. We all think we are God's gift to mankind. That's how human beings are, right? So, but understanding that at a holistic level, right? It's actually a good feedback loop. Saying like, okay, they went with us because they love the fact that we had these features, or they love with us because they love the fact that we actually, responded to all their queries on time and with empathy and with emotion. They love that fact, or they love something. We don't know that. We actually don't know that. As much as we think we know that, it's very, very, very difficult. Even my sales guy who's selling the deal doesn't know it. Let's think about it. He's closest to the deal. He's on this side, but he's closest. And their opinion, I always compare their opinion to the customer's opinion. And simple or qualitatively, I could say, like, I'll just pick up the phone and say, like, hey, why'd you guys go with us? And I'll get an answer. And usually it's kind of, they don't have reason to lie and bullshit me. They're like, yeah, these are 2 or 3 things that we liked about you, and so we went with you. Great.
Now,
question.
The why, no, the why brings me to scale, and scale brings me to AI. So, in how far is it there? Do you see a risk of misusing and, let's say, not skeptically enough using contemporary AI tools for qualifying and quantifying the whys or the answers to the why?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I don't know like what, I think in this limited context, we've had very few false positives around when somebody writes up a message around here's why, and then we kind of analyze that. We obviously topically categorize that realistically. There is obviously, like every tool, there's a chance that it topically categorizes us incorrectly. Okay, there is a finite chance. I don't know what that kind of, I guess, accuracy and hit rate ratio is. Simply put, like, it's very difficult to say like, well, I'm faster than something else because something else is also not defined, right? So you need to have a benchmark, and again, there is no benchmark realistically, right? If you think about it. So the short answer I would say is like, we kind of rely on kind of the topical analysis, and we do some spot checks around like, is the quality, and we'll never get 100%. Anybody who says that they're gonna get 100% right every time is just, again, like in shooting for the impossible task. So the question really is, what is our tolerance for error, and where do we stand in that tolerance for error? And that's true for every single thing across the planet, right? Even resistors have a tolerance for error, simply put, right? And transistors have a tolerance for error, 3%, 5% now. So we have to kind of accept that tolerance, simple. And the system and models are designed to accept that sense of tolerance. Nothing is perfect, so we have to deal with, and how much of imperfection can you deal with? That's kind of a separate argument. So that's the way I think about it.
Okay, so now I cut Ralph short and make it up to him.
There you go.
Thing is, I was wondering, have you done some summaries how much people are following your advice, and those which follow your advice, are they more successful than the ones?
That's a good point.
Which
I don't know. That's a good point. It's a very astute point. I don't look. We are still a vendor. All right, we're not McKinsey, Bain, BCG that we can, frankly, force people to do things. Neither can Bain, McKinsey, BCG do it, but they have a better shot at doing these things. We know who we are. We give them tools. The way I look at it is, our job is to provide the tools and influence and try to influence through tooling, right? Through tooling and process, right? We're not a CX consulting firm. We're not telling people what to do and what not to do. Our job is to give people the tools, and there are consultants that actually do it. Some people believe in it, some people don't believe in it, some people have their own belief system, and that's fine. It's kind of like I'm not in the business of kind of like literally lecturing everybody on what to do and what not to do. That's Bain and BCG and McKinsey will do that, right? So to me, as long as we can keep innovating in the tooling and infrastructure and software perspective, there's a lot of work to be done over there. As long as we can keep innovating there, we'll be fine, and we want to be there. But same thing. People have asked me like, hey, I remember very well in a conference, somebody asked me like, hey, why don't you limit the number of questions in a survey? I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. No, because every use case is different. There is a use case where a researcher doing patient research needs 200 questions to be answered. It's like Microsoft telling you can't write you can't write an essay that is longer than 5 pages. No, there are use cases where you may write a 400-page essay. Okay, it's not the job of tooling companies to tell you how to write an essay, really, right? Because there are actual real use cases. Tobacco research, we've done it. UC Davis does tobacco research, and they go very deep in terms of how people use tobacco, and it takes 2 hours to fill out the survey, and that's what they need, and they believe in it. I'm not in a position as a technology vendor to go out and tell them saying, hey, you're asking too many questions. No, it's between the respondent and the researcher in terms of how our goal is to make sure that facilitate that connect point and make it easy for the researcher to ask those 250 questions, get the data. So that's kind of at least the way I look at it. That's at least I look at my position in that.
Now, just to yank your chain, wouldn't it be helpful as a tool provider, a technology provider, to give some guidance on how long this survey actually should be?
Maybe
from a CX perspective.
Yeah, it's for CX, but again, like I don't want to kind of be, because contexts are different, right? There are different contexts for different, even within CX, depending upon, like for example, B2B CX versus consumer CX. Completely different way to do it. In fact, I wouldn't even say, like, a lot of our customers don't even use surveys because it's, you have a few account managers involved, and it's a $3 million deal, right? Okay, you're not going to send a survey to a guy who just gave you $3 million. Now you'll call him, you'll talk to him, and the account manager will be on the line. Everybody, that's kind of the reality of the situation, right? So people
Isn't
who
that
do
just another way to deliver the survey?
Yeah, but exactly. But you don't need, frankly, you don't need tooling. You have like 10 customers at $10 million. Whatever it is, right? You have, you can pick up the phone and talk. In fact, I would recommend that you pick up the phone and talk. If it's anything
or even
over,
go there. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can go there. You go there physically and you meet with them and say thank you for your business and what's working, what's not working. Let's have a half-day meeting and do
But
it.
Ultimately, it's the same set of questions that you want to get answered.
Or similar, same construct, or same construct. The delivery is different, and sometimes you don't even need the tool. And I'll be the first guy to say, like, no, actually, you don't need this. You don't need this. This is not designed for certain use cases. You don't even need tooling. You just need a paper and a pen and a human being, because somebody just gave you $3 million. So you show up, go to New York, sit down with them for 4 hours. You will get everything you need out of that conversation. So the way to think about, say, at least because there are different contexts, different mechanisms for each context, you can group them together. And our core kind of philosophy is just understanding customers, truly deeply understanding customers. In some cases, when you have thousands of customers, obviously you can't go to New York with each and every one of them. You can't do that. So that's when you start thinking about tools and technology. Where you have 10 customers, you can pick up the phone and call 10 customers. If you have 100 customers, maybe you can pick up the phone and call them. And if you have 1,000 customers, well, obviously you can't make 1,000 phone calls. At least not easily. So I think these are different contexts that are applied for different use cases and different mechanisms. And I think each and you can group these mechanisms together. I'm not saying there's like millions of use cases, but there are like 50, 100 use cases that are slightly different. And I reckon, from my viewpoint, our tool is not applicable to every single use case. It's not true. It's not true for a lot of them. And it's up to us and the customer and everybody else to decide, okay, is this applicable to this use case? If so, let's do it. If not, well, use something else. That's it. There are like millions of other tools available, so you can use that, or you can use a pen and a paper, or you can use a Google Doc. There's lots of ways to solve the problem.
Chance, Ralf? Chance? Gleich ist sie vorbei.
The challenge I see is you are advising folks, especially CX leaders. So having all the artificial intelligence at our hands, like the elves from Cologne or that little dwarfs, we do some magic. How can you support if you are advising CX leaders to change some stuff measurable, touchable, feelable, emotionally being realized in the next 90 days? If you go for such 90 days changing move and advise somebody, what is it what you would suggest a CX leader to be differently realized, visioned, and seen in the next 90 days? What would you advise him to do differently to be out of the standard?
I'd say like the first thing I would say, like a lot of customers don't understand why customers buy from them, why customers leave. Simple. If you have the answers to those two questions, you can do a lot of changes and adjust. Simple, right? Why does somebody buy from you? Why do they leave from you? They're two different things. They're two, obviously two different reasons, really, right? Simple. Do you know that? If you don't know that, put a system in play. Second, once you understand why somebody's buying from you, do more of what is working and do less of what is not working on the other side. Really simple. You can just boil it down to a reasonably simple argument across the board. You start off at that level, like, do you know why people are buying from you? Yes, no, maybe. Do you know why people are leaving? Yes, no, maybe. All right, put some systems in play to understand both these signals. Once you understand these signals, start making some changes to do more of the stuff that's working, do less of the stuff that is not working. It kind of comes down to like pretty 101 stuff. And that itself is good. I think that requires, as much, it's easy to say that, it requires internal discipline to do this, to measure this, to do and act on it. And I usually I like how you put it, like, hey, what can you do in 90 days? It's pretty easy, not pretty easy, but it's doable in 90 days, right? To any context if you're running any CRM platform, you can just say like, okay, when people are leaving, when people are coming in. That's a trigger point of an entry into the CRM platform, a trigger point entry out of the CRM platform. It's pretty well organized now. If you're reasonably well organized, when people are coming into the system, and when people are going out of the system. Then you trigger something and say like, hey, do you know why? Now the trigger can be an email, trigger can be a text message, trigger can be a phone call, trigger can be a flight to New York, whatever it is. So that's a contextual argument. And if you can get the why, then once you get the why, you can say, all right, we've heard the same thing 3 times, stop doing it. Right? We change the pricing, we do this, or, we find it super difficult to do business with you because you don't do monthly billing or whatever it is, really, right? So like, okay, we want, or we didn't go with you because you didn't offer monthly billing. All right, whatever it is, right? So that you're losing customers because, you didn't offer a monthly billing option. Cash flow is a big, important issue. And you can make a change. Then you can say like, hey, you know what? Starting next quarter, customers in this segment will get a monthly billing option, and that's change. That is progress. That's moving in the right direction. So that's gonna work. You have high degree of certainty because you had this people complain to you about the fact that, hey, without having this option is a huge problem for us. It's tough to do business with you because we have cash flow issues, and we don't mind paying your fee, but we want to pay it on a monthly basis. Not annual upfront. And obviously, I want the money annual upfront. I get it. Right? That's the reality, right? But then also, I want the customers too. So it kind of goes both ways. So I have to make a decision. Like, hey, dude, how much do I lean in? How do I structure this? And if I can cash flow it, okay, fine. Let's kind of add that equation. So I think these are the kind of things that they only come about when you start listening and you start reacting to the data that's coming in. And I like it how, like I said, 30 days you'll have some data, and you can have a meeting internally. So like, hey, look at the data that we have every 30 days, make a decision. Every 30 days, make a decision. And within 6 months, 9 months, 3 months, like something will change, and then you get addicted to it. Then you make it into a operating process. And you say, oh, fuck, this is working. We're actually moving in the right direction. Maybe not as fast as we wanted to, but at least it's the right. And how fast is depending upon the bets you're taking, how bold you are, how aggressive you are. That's a slope of that will determine, how good you are in terms of making those bets. So that's at least that's how I think about it.
Getting a little back to the AI in why questions, or the usage of AI for analysis and why questions, or open-ended questions in general. Do you have a recommendation for a workflow in place that turns those responses into an action workflow?
Yeah. So what we do,
part two. Double question here. We are not making it simple here. When it comes to AI, guardrails are quite necessary. So what types of guardrails would you set in place or recommend setting in place for creating CX insight pipelines and giving them a bias for action?
Yeah, so if you think about the why question, the way we do it in our platform is the open-ended text gets mapped to n number of topics, really, right? If it cannot get mapped to a number of topics, then it creates a new topic, and then it goes into our system where the CX manager or the researcher can approve that topic, really. So it's not creating random topics on its own, really, right?
Yeah.
So, but the approved topics are available. So if you think about it, like you say, like, hey, why do I hang out with Thomas? Because, I love his bald head. I don't know. I know that's and the topic is not present. If the topic is not present, then it gets added to the system, right? And the research manager can then verify that. It's like, okay, it's good to go, really, right? And then once it's verified, then every new topic about that is automatically, as long as it's categorized to that topic. So now even from a consumption perspective, now you have, not thousands of random comments to look at. You have 15 topics to look at. And you know that these 1,000 comments have mapped to these 15 topics at issue. And then you can make a decision on which of these topics are doable, easily. And you can make a decision of how difficult is it to do versus how important is it to do. All right, they're two different vectors, right? How difficult is it to solve the problem, and how important is it? So you already get a good sense of importance, right, from the data itself, right? You get a good, good sense of like these topics are more important than these topics. Okay, we got that. Now, how difficult is it to do any one of these topics, right? How is it to fix any one of them? And that's an internal problem, right? If you say, like, I want to fix the bridge, well, it's not easy to fix a bridge. You got to do, again, same thing. Every company deals with it. Some things are easy to do, and some things are pretty hard to do. That's it, right? It's just, you can say it's going to take 1 month, 1 year, 10 years. You can make that determination, and then you get a correlation. Then you can say, okay, cool. Here's our map this month. These are the easy ones. Do we take on the easy ones, or do we take on a big problem and try to solve this big problem? And that is where the betting comes. That's where your human intuition comes, right? So like, all right, cool. I know these problems have to be solved. I know the importance of these problems. I know the kind of the difficulty of solving these problems. Also, you got to have people internally at least make an estimate of the difficulty. All right. And then somebody's got to make a decision. All right, we got all the data, and still you got to make a call and say, like, hey, do we take on the difficult problems, or do we take on the easy problems now? And these are all, that's how, in my mind, that's somebody's got to make the call and say, like, okay, we'll take on the easy problems first, and then we'll take on the difficult problems. And some people will be like, no, actually, we'll take on the difficult problems first, and then take on the easy problems. And in my mind, there's no method to the madness in terms of, like, you got to make a choice. You got to, and different people have different viewpoints on this. And I don't even pretend to claim that there's only one solution to this. There are people who solved difficult problems and been very successful. People who solve easy problems and put the difficult one aside. They make some progress. So that's at least my framework in terms of how I think about, especially going back to your question around why the AI, any AI platform can, take a look at, why you're saying something and categorize it. That's not, frankly, that complicated, or, and that can be automated to a large extent with high degree of certainty. And then the decision has to be made. Again, you could argue even AI could potentially make that decision. I don't think we are there yet in terms of, allowing AI to make that second decision around which problems to take on, which problems they can give recommendations, guidance, but that'll be based on kind of kind of some level of kind of like maturity. But I think that's kind of where that's at least where we are going. The first part is done, and maybe we'll invest, we'll kind of invest into the second part also in terms of understanding complexity. But there's a lot of input that we need to understand complexity, right? It's not, and each company, is different. Same problem in one company can be easy to fix. Same problem in another company can be actually difficult to fix, really, right? And that's very, very contextual. So I don't think, at this point at least, I don't think that any recommendation from AI is going to be useful, but at least the first part, we can use a lot of AI to kind of like solve for the phase one, or the of this kind of flow, of this pipeline, as you called it.
So now CX is a lot about journey and their management, and the optimization of touch points, the optimization, the analytics of journeys, and, well, after all, the optimization of journeys. Where, in which aspects of all this do you see the biggest value that companies that offer tool sets like yours can add value, or do add value?
I think it's internal connect. A lot of times journeys are actually used internally to connect different parts of the business together and let them understand it. I'll give you an example. Ford, for example, kind of uses kind of our journey management platform. Whenever they do an internal business proposal for a particular initiative, they are now required to kind of do a journey mapping exercise. How does that? So, okay, I want to put this new Bluetooth CarPlay stuff in this Ford Maverick, right? Whatever it is. And so, like every company, people are going to be pitching new ideas to the CFO, to the leadership. And I think they've done a pretty amazing job. Their CX team will help the guy who's pitching it, or the team that is pitching it, to do an impact analysis. How does that affect the entire ecosystem? How does that affect the journey of the customer? And that allows different parts of the organization to actually see that and say, okay, we can't just do this. We gotta if you're going to do this CarPlay thing, then we gotta have like a teaching exercise from the dealership because it's so new that nobody knows how to use it, or something like that. So you got to think about that. Then you can't just put it over there and not think about plan B, or in other parts. And so understanding that, right? That's why the journey management exercise is useful. I think it's actually internal more than external. So like, hey, look, if we are going to sell this product, how's retail going to handle returns, right? Oh, okay. So if it's got a battery, so returns have to come. You can't fly the returns back, and there's all kinds of things going to come. So return management has to be thought about. Then this also. There are like 8 different things that are thought about, which in a siloed model is like, okay, you want it to be siloed so they can execute fast, but the journey connects all the silos together, or at least gives you a perspective. Maybe not connects the journey, everything together, but it gives everybody a perspective on, okay, we haven't thought about that. So this allows, this allows everybody to think about it holistically, at least kind of see all the impact analysis across the board, and in a simplified way. That is pretty effective, actually. So I think another way for especially companies that are larger, like, okay, all these things are getting pitched, and we don't know what with this, we can't approve this or disapprove this without doing impact analysis on how 2 years down the road, or how service centers are going to deal with this thing, or how post-sales services are going to deal with this. So in order to do that, to bring all the stakeholders for the different pieces together, a journey management exercise is a good way, at least it's one way, is a good way to put everything together in one package and say, like, hey, here's how we think it's going to impact all the different components. And here's what we've thought about it. We've talked to these stakeholders. We've talked to these stakeholders. Then the CFO can say, okay, good. You've talked. There's enough kind of thought process have gone around this. I can say yes or no, or okay, you need this money. Usually it's, they're pitching for money. And so, all right, I can say yes or no to the budget. And it gives everybody a little bit more comfort that, a lot of thought has gone into the different components, really, right? And that's how a lot of our customers use our journey management platform to understand the impact analysis across, not even in their kind of area of the business, but in other areas of the business.
Okay, as we are drawing towards the end, and I'd like to do something different in this episode as we did in the previous ones. Yeah, hang loose.
Hang loose.
You're not off the hook. You're not off the hook yet.
Okay. I'm game.
Usually we end with what we call famous last words: one question, one answer.
Okay.
I'd like to do that quite different today. Also, as we have a bunch of things that I'm curious about. Yeah. So what I have is 4 or 5 brief questions that I'd like to answer you briefly.
Okay.
Just, not one word, but briefly. Let's say
one
question, 1 minute or so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one question, one sentence. Okay, let's do it.
Oh,
I've never done this before. I've never done this before, so let's do it. I'm always game for new ideas. Come on.
There are bunches of CX metrics. What's the one that you'd like to retire rather today than tomorrow?
Retire.
Yeah, retire. Yeah.
CSAT.
Oh, okay. I would have expected NPS. Okay.
NPS still is reasonably effective. CSAT, I think, is like, in my opinion, that's it.
Yeah. Well,
one sentence done.
Yeah. Perfect. Now, similar. And the other way around, actually, what's one research method that more CX teams actually should learn and apply?
Max diff. Max diff is not very complicated, better than simple choice, not as complicated as conjoint. It's kind of the happy medium. It's easy to understand and does choice modeling and does trade-off modeling. But conjoint is super complicated. People get, you need it's just complicated. It is more effective, but it's also much more complicated. So which means you have that issue. So max diff.
Oh, well, for conjoint you almost need a PhD in math, but
almost. But yeah, exactly. So you have to think through this problem much more. But max diff is a lot easier to understand and execute, quite frankly.
Okay, so there are bunches of misconceptions about what customer-driven strategies actually are. What's the predominant one you see?
Misconceptions. The customer's always right. I think that's a misconception. I don't believe that.
Customer's not always right.
No. Especially when doing products. Come on, customers have what they know, and that's it. So it's kind of the balance, right? They know what they know, and they're giving you context, and that's fairly true. And then there's 35% that they don't know. So the 35% that they don't know, you have to come up with something. Actually, that's what innovation is. Like, customer's not going to ask for it. You come up with it and say, like, this is what I think you guys should do.
We wouldn't have an iPhone without that.
Yeah, so it's
mindset.
Exactly. So you got to have some mindset to say there's space. Really, right? There's space. Now it's 50%, 30%, 75%. It's a different argument, but that's how I think.
Cool. Last but not least, we talked about data and having lots of data. So where do you think is one place where more data actually makes decisions worse?
Oh, like behavioral data. Like a lot of people are like, I want behavioral data. Every single click, every single, like, especially browser behavior data. I've seen, like, it's like you got shitload of data. The signal noise ratio is pretty shitty over there, right? So you had, like, I've seen everything you've clicked on. For example, if I give you a click stream of everything I've clicked on, I'll be like, oh, cool. I got 3 terabytes of shitty clicks Vivek has done in the last 1 year. What are you going to do with it? It's the signal noise is very bad. Right.
Okay.
There's very low. There is signals inside that, but the noise is so high that you won't be able to pull out the signals from there. So more clicks is okay. Cool. You got 8 gigabytes of clicks, and so and that's why. So that's at least my compressed answer.
Sequel to that one. How to do that better?
I haven't figured it out. When I figure it out, I'll sell you a tool. How about that?
Okay. Perfect response. These have been actually perfect famous last words. As we are hearing Big Ben again.
Big Ben again.
It looks like we are on top of the hour. Means perfect timing. Thanks a lot, Vivek, for this funny and insightful CRMKonvo.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
brother.
And thanks a lot to everybody who is still around. Well, there seem to be some. And hopefully you all can join in again, or y'all, as I should say right now, living in the Southeast.
With that German accent, I love it.
With that
brother. I
German
love it.
accent.
With that German accent, that is so funny. dude.
Hopefully you all can join in next week when we are having Tony Kaskinen of 180 Ops, revenue operations company, and are discussing with him whether revenue ops is actually the new CRM or whether that's a bullshit question. So thanks a lot and see you next week. We are going backstage now. Bye.